happens in life, it's how you let it shape you that matters. Our next guest will share some strategies to thrive because of the trauma you've experienced. Hi, and welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, transformational coaches, and spiritual entrepreneurs stepping up to be the change they seek in the world. I'm your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist, on a mission to help coaches and entrepreneurs amplify their voice, monetize their mission, and get visible, leveraging podcasts and the huge audience we have over on the Gnostic TV network. Today, we are chatting with Sandra Cooze. And Sandra is a certified trauma healer, intuitive mentor coach, Reiki master teacher, and published author on a mission to revolutionize trauma healing. Welcome to the show, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Jill. I'm so happy to be here.
It is awesome to have you here. And I did so well on your name in the beginning, and then I stumbled right over.
That's all right.
I apologize. So I'm going to ask you the big question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's the most significant thing, in your opinion, as individuals we can do to make an impact on how the world is going?
We can heal our trauma because on the energetic level, trauma is keeping us in the 3D dense energy. And the more we heal, the more we rise. And if everybody does that in a decade or two, the world could be a completely different place.
I love that. I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
That world. So your story really begins your journey. And so you want to talk about that a little bit, because I don't think you would be where you are if you hadn't gone through what you went through.
Not even close. Well, my story starts in Germany, where I was born and grew up. I was 12 years old when my mother made it possible for me to take care of a pony. The biggest dream a 12-year-old girl could ever have.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I loved every minute of it. But what we didn't know was that the stable master was a child molester. So ultimately, without going too deep into my story, because that's not the subject, it's just the intro, he molested me. Luckily, my parents believed me and made sure I don't go there anymore. But don't go there anymore was the only thing they ever said to me about it, which is not what I needed. However, as an adult, I understand that they were coming from their own trauma, their mother's, father's guilt for putting me in a situation, which wasn't their fault. So when we look at trauma, we have to look at it from two different viewpoints. Anyways, the second thing that happened was when I was 14. We went on vacation to Austria, where we went every year. And the hotel owner loved to drink welcome shots with the guests. So, and the hotel was always full. So at the end of the day, he was drunk every night. He had the bad vice to always wanted to touch women's breasts. Like kind of like a handshake, you know, it was like the 80s. So husbands,
Creepy old man.
And women were like, God, just get it over with. Thanks to the 80s. But when I was 14, he tried to touch me. And I said no, and I ran away. Now, my parents had left me and my sister in his care because they were looking around new accommodations they were building. And he was just chasing me around the hotel. For him, it was a game, like he was the hunter and I was the prey or something. So this was very traumatizing, even though he never touched me. But just not having my no respected was harsh. Then when my parents came back, I ran to them, of course, for safety and told them what happened. And my mother tried to play it down as in, come on, you can't do this to our daughter. She doesn't understand. You don't mean anything by it. Back then I was mortified. Again, today I understand she was trying to diffuse the situation without causing a big rift, because we literally went there every year and we loved it there. Mm-hmm. So the next thing that happened was when I was 16, we had a class in school about sexual assault and where to go when this happens. And up until this point, I had completely suppressed those two incidents. But then it came back into my consciousness, and then I understood what had happened. So this was, since then, it was staying in my head until I was ready to heal. Also, from the age of 16 to 17, I was severely bullied in school from almost my entire class. And the crescendo was when I was writing a letter to my pen pal telling her about the first boyfriend I had and how happy I was and whatever you write as a 16-year-old girl, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, my classmates found that letter, made copies, and distributed them around the whole school. When I was bullied, I was talking to my grandmother about it. And she said, just ignore them, they will stop. Of course they didn't, until the teacher stepped in. So again, I was dismissed. Then when I was between 19 and 25, I was sexually assaulted multiple times, including on the workplace. Then when I was 22, I was raped. When I went to see a psychologist about 2 years after I was raped, he dismissed me with the words, I believe you already worked through it all. What am I supposed to do? So he basically mistook my not falling apart and sobbing while I was telling my story as I had already healed my trauma, because he had no idea what trauma means. So just because I was good at suppressing and keeping control in front of a medical health professional, he thought I had already healed. Then I hit rock bottom. And then my real journey began.
Wow. God, I love the 70s and 80s and
Don't you?
the sexual revolution, which just was like permission for men to be obnoxious and obscene and to traumatize a whole two generations really of women in like horrible ways. Like, yeah, don't even get me started there. And to this day, I'm going to go just a little bit further because I have trauma around this stuff too, and it's important that we talk about it because so many women were victimized by men who it was just brushed off as, they're just being guys. No, you're being vulgar and you're destroying another human being's dignity. And as far as I can tell, that was their goal, is just to make you feel as worthless as they possibly could, because that's the result of a lot of these encounters that you have with these people. And now they're mostly in their 80s and they're still that way. They still look at women in a way that's just like so inappropriate. But back to healing from all of this, you come full circle with trauma healing and you're adding Reiki into it. So how does all of that look?
Well, to get into where I am now and why I'm offering energy healing is because that's what helped me. I got basically two key points in how to heal my trauma from two different people. The first was a friend of mine who was very spiritual. He saw me sitting on my couch, feeling miserable and defeated. He was standing in front of me, hands on his hips, stern face, get a quartz crystal already. And I had no idea what he meant. But it was the most amazing experience I ever had. I took the crystal to bed with me every night, not knowing what meditation meant, but I held it in my hand, and within 3 months, I started to feel better. I started to feel lighter. I started to feel more outspoken. I started to come back. Not healed by any means, but the energy overlay that was there, holding me hostage in a place I didn't want to be, was being released by the crystal. Then the other aspect was how I need to approach to heal my trauma. And that was my last ex-boyfriend who, when he broke up with me, he said, I was just married to a woman with mental health issues. I don't want to be dating one. He didn't say this mean. It was just a fact he stated. And this gave me the biggest aha moment ever. Because for the first time, I was sitting down and looking at myself and what I was doing in relationships. And I realized I was sabotaging each and every one of them. Because I wanted to be loved, but I was afraid to be loved at the same time because I felt unworthy because no one had ever really loved me the way I needed to. But if you're traumatized, or when you're traumatized, then no amount of love is enough to fill that void that's within you, because you need to heal that first. And then you can allow someone else to truly love you the way you're supposed to be loved. So
That
from
is
that,
such an important point. And from personal experience, I even tried the religious route, hoping that God would love me. But then I realized God couldn't even love me the way I needed to be loved until I learned to just love and accept myself. And part of that is just being authentic to who
exactly.
you are. And, people like you, they like you. If they don't like you, that's okay. You have permission to like yourself.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about authenticity is it grows with you. So even when you're still in trauma, but you're accepting it, okay, I'm living with trauma right now, that's just how it is.
Mhm.
You're authentic in that level. And the more you heal, the more authentic you become. And even when you're fully healed and you step into the next level of your being and you up level, you go through the next glass ceiling, your authenticity becomes even more defined. So it's not something that an end goal, it's something that grows with you, just like your purpose.
Yeah. And it changes, and it doesn't have to be like, just because yesterday you were this way, it doesn't mean today you have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I try
okay.
to explain it to my husband every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have meant that yesterday, but nah, today it doesn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
So
I know,
basically,
go ahead.
sorry, spirituality was with me from the beginning. Then after my last boyfriend broke up with me and I decided that I'm not going to have another relationship until I am the woman I want to be in a relationship, must have completely shifted something because 3 months later I met my husband and we now celebrate 21 years. So I must have done something right. And
Awesome.
when I came here to Canada, that's when Reiki found me
Hmm.
because that's when I was ready. And from there on out, it was in 2010 when I studied it. And it felt like I was coming home. That's what Reiki was for me. And as I did my Reiki training and then started having clients, I noticed that how after our session, we were sitting there for me to make sure they're grounded and everything was okay. They always started to open up about their trauma to me, and I had no idea why. So, but what I noticed was that I always knew exactly what to tell them, exactly what they needed to hear. Now I know that I was channeling that. But back then it was just surprising. So what they also told me a lot about was how their therapist said, well, I can't help you anymore because they reached the limit of what they could do.
Hmm.
Others said, well, I triggered my therapist and had to calm her down in my session. If my therapist can't handle my story, how am I supposed to? And stories like these were the foundation of my purpose. Like, this can't be. I healed from trauma. Why can't the others? What I realized on that journey then was you can only help someone heal to the level you have healed yourself. And most mental health professionals go into the field with the right reasons. They want to help someone. But if they don't heal their own trauma, if they don't heal from PTSD, they can only teach someone else how to cope with it and give medication. And that's the extent of that. So if you want to heal someone, you have to be healed from what you're trying to help them heal. Otherwise, you get burnout, you get exhausted, you are in this trauma energy. How can you help someone heal when you're still in the trauma energy yourself? It doesn't work this way. So I kept on healing and expanding my knowledge on trauma because my own journey taught me so much of what really has to happen when it comes to trauma and what really works. And it was amazing to see how much Reiki actually works in trauma healing because so much of what is releasing when we have a trigger is energy, like PTSD or panic attacks. With Reiki, you can release it in 5 minutes and have your client back in balance just by releasing the energy. That's so powerful, and it's nowhere seen in the mental health field. How important energy work is really to help with trauma.
It is really amazing how well Reiki does work. I'll
Mhm.
admit I was skeptical, and I have a friend who is a Reiki master, and even over the internet, and she's always like, "Oh, I got to touch you. I got to, you know, have the energy there, but that isn't actually true. Energy travels by thought. And um I was having mouth problems, like my gums hurt like bad, and she just did Reiki on me, and it was like literally within minutes it was gone, and it has not come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
it just works. It's kind of like intentions when people hold intentions for each other. It's the focus of energy to do a specific task. It it sounds like magic, but it's not. It's really science. There's lots and lots of studies that have been done around it and how well it works. So when we're talking about trauma and healing from trauma, I want to ask you two questions. One is about PTSD and trauma and how they're different, or are they different, or how does that fit in there?
Well, essentially, PTSD is a huge trigger. And that's what it is. A very huge trigger that affects the body, the mind, everything. But it's just a trigger, and a trigger can be released.
Okay, so somebody that's walking around thinking they have PTSD and they it's just because they've been triggered by something and they can't release it.
No.
Is that okay? So
PTSD is something, a very intense traumatic event, like soldiers
mhm.
in the military.
Yeah.
They usually, a lot of them come back with PTSD. Being raped, sexually assaulted, all of that. Everybody reacts differently to trauma. Some can
Mhm.
handle it better than others.
Mhm.
But once you have, it's like the memories coming back. So, for
Mhm.
example, right after I was raped, I could, even after it happened, even weeks after, the memory just came back, and I could feel how he was entering me. I could literally feel how, as if I was still there and it was happening.
Mhm.
That is part of PTSD, catapulting you back into the story, and you're just stuck in it and can't go anywhere. And
Mhm.
then the
Okay.
energy buildup, and it's overwhelming, and you can't breathe. And I mean, everybody reacts different to PTSD, but the fact is, it's a huge trigger. And if you can just release the energy, you can calm down. You still have to heal the trauma, but at least you can come back to a calm state and look at it.
Mhm. That
And then
makes
you can.
sense. Thank you for explaining that, because I really actually didn't know how that worked. And there are four keys to actually healing from trauma. What are those?
Yes. Well, first off, you need to find someone who has actually done the work themselves, because they can help you, because they have been where you are and they know how it's done because they've done it. Then you need to think about trauma needs to be released on all levels, the physical, mental, and energetic level. Then to fully release trauma, you also need to look into the ancestral generational line, because there's so much trauma we carry around through limiting beliefs and all those wise words we were given by our parents and grandparents, which are all based on trauma, on their own traumatic upbringing. And then client participation. That's so important that you, as the person who's trying to heal the trauma, lean into it. When you go to a counselor therapist, usually you think they're going to fix you, but this is not how this works. A true healer can only guide you and be there with you while you do the work, and they're just supporting you with this. But you have to do the major work. You have to go through the incident again to heal. But I always tell my clients, we only have to go through this one more time. And then it's gone, because once a trigger is released, it's not coming back. When you're suppressing the trigger, you're suppressing, and it's getting worse and worse because the trigger is getting louder and louder. But once you release it, it's gone. So what is worse, suppressing or going through it one more time? Depends on the person if they're
Let's
ready.
get over it.
Well, I wouldn't put it this way, but let it go.
Yeah, let it
Let
go. Okay,
you.
that's nicer.
Yes.
I know you've written a book called The Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma. So you want to explain how the
Sure.
basis of the book and how that goes?
Well, Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma is actually book one of a trilogy. The
Mhm.
second one is in the works, so it's gonna come. I don't know quite yet when, but I hope end of this year, if I can kick myself in the butt and do it. So the first book is about, it starts with my story,
Mhm.
but it's like 10 pages of my story. So it's not about my story, it's just the beginning. And then I turned it into a workbook. So I wanted to write a book where a trauma survivor can start their own healing journey with exercises, with under chapters that really go deep into the matter of what trauma really is. That doesn't sound technical or as like a PhD wrote it or something. So really down to earth, easy to understand examples of our lives, how trauma can affect us, where you're at in your story, and what you can do to release it. And it's really a journey. Trauma healing is a journey. And we need to understand that. It's not one size fits all. That's why therapy works for some, but not for others. So for some, yoga works. For others, Reiki works. And then for, again, others, they love the therapy and coaching and just being in it. So you have to find what you resonate with. And then the healing will work. And this is what I'm trying to bring across in my book. So I have like journaling techniques. I focus on the chakras and how you can check them, how they swing, and understand how the chakras have an effect on your body and how trauma affects the chakras and so on and so forth. To get like the full picture from all three different bodies that we have, how trauma affects us, and ways we can start healing.
And you help people in groups, one-on-one? How does your coaching actually look for
I
people?
work with people one-on-one simply because trauma is very personal and every story is different. So I prefer one-on-one so I can really be there for them and not have to look at different people at the same time. Because you never know when a major trigger is coming up that was just waiting for this triggering word to come up. And when I have like 10
Mhm.
people in a group, it's what now? Now I have to focus on one person and the others have to sit there and wait. I don't want to do that. I want to give everyone my full attention because that's what they deserve.
So how would somebody know that they're ready for you to be
Well,
healed?
I have
Because
two types of people that I work with. First are the people who have been suppressing their trauma for decades, and one day they all come rushing back to the surface. I work with those because I can help them release the trigger much faster than years and years of therapy. I try to get them in and out as fast as possible because they have a life to live. And the others are just fed up. They're sick and tired of the trauma. They know they have it. They can't get rid of it, and it's standing in their way. And they have goals, they have dreams, and the trauma is just stopping them. That is a sign that you are more than ready to finally heal and be yourself. So these two types of people I'm working with. Oh, let's see, those are the ones that find me. Because the ones need it, and the others are just fed up with it.
and it sounds silly when you say it like that you're just fed up with your trauma. But I actually can relate to that
Mm-hmm.
so clearly. You reach a point where you recognize, okay, that's the trauma, and I'm just over it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
and you start looking around for the answers and for healing so that you don't ever have to like wander through it again, because trauma is one of those things that you think you're okay, but then you go along and then it just like you slam into this wall and then you're there again.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas healing is like, yeah, you have the memories of it, but it's not like it doesn't incapacitate you in the way that trauma does incapacitate people
Mm-hmm.
that haven't
That's
dealt
right.
with it. So you also offer a 3-video course on how to release a trigger. Explain how that works.
Well, so many people always ask me, well, how do I release a trigger? I always talk about that. That's what I'm doing. A trigger is coming up. I'm actually excited. Something else that wants to leave. Let's get to it.
Excuse me, energy.
And so Yeah, I create a little mini course on how people can start releasing their own triggers.
Mhm.
Now, fair warning, if you have like this intense, overblown trigger that's coming up, that mini course is probably not going to do much, or it's going to take a long, long time before you are able to release that trigger. But those little triggers, let's say like you have a conversation with your husband and he says something about the food is not salty enough and you blow up in a trigger because you feel like you're not good enough.
Mhm.
You know, this whole his family, her family, childhood upbringing, that usually comes through marriages, which is why most of
Mhm.
them don't last. It's triggers. So if you can do that and release the trigger, then that's, I would say, easy. But the full-blown trigger is a different category. But yes, it's a mini course about how to release a trigger and step by step. And it's very simple, actually. You just got to be brave enough to do it.
And yeah, and therein lies the secret.
Yes,
So
always.
we will put the link for that in the show notes. So be sure and look in the show notes to get that 3 video course on how to release a trigger, but not the main. Triggers are not the same as trauma, so don't confuse the two. She's not telling you that you're going to take this 3 video course and suddenly not have experienced trauma anymore in your life. So maybe you should talk about the difference between trauma and trigger for just a second.
Well, technically, trauma is made up of series of triggers because trauma is just a story, part of your life story that will never change. But the emotions attached to the story, those are the triggers. I always call triggers a guiding light toward what needs healing because you're only being triggered when a negative emotion is being triggered. So, and then you know that, okay, I need healing. I need to heal this so I'm not triggered anymore. But when you're in a trigger, it's like the emotions completely take over and you cannot do logic while in a trigger. That takes a lot of work to be able to step out of that. So in essence, trauma is the story and the trigger is the emotion that's still attached to it. And it's the emotion that causes those responses. It's the emotion of the story that causes the PTSD attack. It causes anxiety. So it's the emotion attached to the story. Once you unlink the emotion from the story, from the trauma fades away into the abyss and it's like, okay, my floor is brown. Who cares? That's how your trauma is going to be once you're unlinked from that. No matter if it was PTSD or not. It's the same process. Once the emotion is released, the trauma fades away. It's like you're stepping into a new reality where trauma doesn't exist. Because I have absolutely no connection to my trauma anymore. It's something that happened, but I couldn't care less. There's no emotion attached to it anymore. And that's how it should be. So that's the difference.
Yeah, that's great explanation. And for some things that are often confused and overlaid with each other so that it's really hard to look at the problem and say, okay, so what came first? The trigger or the trauma? And separating out in the emotional part, that's really actually very interesting to me because emotions are chemical reactions that happen in your body that cause an expression that we call emotion. Whereas just being able to detach the emotion, the chemical reaction from the story, and we all have stories that we tell ourselves. Sometimes they're like they may not even be true. And if you ask somebody else who was there at the same time, you're going to get a different story. But they're the stories that we have shaped for ourselves that define who we are in a lot of cases from when we were very young. And there is emotion attached to those stories, and being able to release the connection, I can see how powerful that healing would be. Pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
So how do people get in touch with you, Sandra? They want to work
Well,
with you.
get in touch with me through my website, riseaboveyourstory.com. I offer a free consultation. So just click the button and book a consultation and we can chat and see if we resonate. because the most important thing for me is that you feel comfortable with me. Because we're going to dig deep to dig everything out that is there, and you need to feel safe and comfortable with me to do that. So then
Awesome.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Rise Above Your Story, and I'm on YouTube as Sandra Cooze Unfiltered.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation, Sandra.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
To learn more about Sandra, to get the 3-video series course on how to release triggers, and to explore her offers for trauma coaching, please visit www.riseaboveyourstory.com. And we will be sure to put both of these links in the show notes below. And thank you to the audience for tuning in with us today. If you have a podcast or you're interested in starting one to get your message in front of our huge and active audience, be sure to reach out to us at jill@gnostichtv.com. We love to help spiritual entrepreneurs and coaches amplify their voice and monetize their mission, and offer a variety of ways to do this on the Gnostic TV Network platform. Join us for our next episode as we share what others are doing to raise the global frequency. And remember, change begins with you. You have all the power to change the world. Start today and get visible.